Ta-da! And welcome to Joseph's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow, or subscribe to any of the videos I put out there. Just put them out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. Today's video, part 1 in putting a bowling alley on this layout. Who would have thought that for those of you that took a moment to watch my most viewed video, which is the build on the model airport behind me, I made mention that I left enough room in the backyard, and should I come across some sufficient funds, I would love to build a regulation 2-lane bowling alley in the backyard. You know the thing, maybe a pool on the roof, commercial builders come in and do the job properly. You know, the rest of the things, the Guns N' Roses, the AC/DC pinball machine, the one that features the 12-inch sub in it. Just that beautiful little entertainment area that links up the rest of the house. It's nice to dream. In the meantime, though, we're going to have a bowling alley. I couldn't believe it. The billboard simply wasn't enough. And while preparing for another thing we're seeing in a future video, I came across a bowling alley. I don't mind saying it is prefabricated, but that's really not the focus here. The footprint was just right, it fits my scene perfectly, and while I always had something planned for this particular corner on the 40 Towers loop, this blew my expectations out of the water. So what we're going to do, it's the typical 30-minute video, but I've chopped it in half, and we're going to have a little bit of fun as well in this first part, where we're going to meet one of my all-time heroes, and we're going to have a little game. So there's a little something for everyone in this one. Let's get stuck into it. The first part's all going to be about getting some earthworks done and the concept and what we need to do to start to build up the scene. Part 2, we'll see the finished product. Let's dive in and get stuck into it, shall we?
Ah yes, the mighty voiceover. As you recall, we obviously got stuck into the billboard. Now here is the space, once again another one of our wonderful corners. So just taking a little bit of baking paper or parchment paper and tracing out a bit of a template. We're going to use one of the foam boards on this one. We're not going to do anything too tricky here, but you can see we've just roughly marked it out and then scored it just with a regular knife. Now we need to shape it so it's a little bit of a hillside, and I make no apologies in using one of these hot wire cutters. They can be picked up for about $10, and literally, as the saying goes, it's a hot knife through butter. It's a wonderful tool because we can also get the landscaping and a rough profile done without the needing of sanding and making a great big mess. I absolutely love this thing, and here we go. Let's slot it into place. So far looking quite good. Now you'll see we've just marked out where our actual bowling alley building needs to go, and we've scribed a few points for where we're going to need to make some electrical connections. Again, the other attachment with the hot wire cutter is our probe, and we can make these elegant little cuts out here. And I think these really work out wonderfully, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. We take another piece of our foam board. It's just a thin piece now. It's just to sort of create like the concrete slab that's going to elevate the scene. Of course, we're going to attach it, a few drops of Gorilla Glue, and we'll weight it down. Now we're just looking at a few different trees. I knew what I wanted to do, but I was just mucking around with the idea of the other empty bit. I did want to have a larger tree. We may still be doing something else with that, and what I really wanted was these trees I'm pointing to at the coastal scene. I wanted more of these. However, I thought I ordered the right ones. They weren't quite right. I've ordered more. Maybe I'll swap them around. I don't know. But the ones we've ordered seem to be a bit of a winner. Just fetched a little bit of extra gravel and texture of stuff of what I needed from the backyard. And if you're wondering what's in the background, it's just Duval's triangle. We'll talk more about that in the next video regarding our substation. In the meantime, before we actually, while it's all good and clean, before I do anything that I've picked up from the garden, what I like to do is I bake it in the oven. So we're going to put it on a baking sheet now, and we're going to pop it in the oven running at about 200 degrees or thereabouts, and we'll leave it in there for about 20 minutes. And at that point, then we'll just come back and sieve it through. Right, just sort of spread it a bit out on the tray there, ready to go. Now you're probably wondering why I'm not just using the general sort of stones I've used in other projects. On this particular one, the angle you're going to come in and look at it on, I really wanted to try and get some special detail on here. So we're going to sieve the stones through, so we've got the lower ones at the bottom and the thinner stuff at the top, and then our crushed up leaves and bark And a little bit of static grass will complete the embankment very nicely, I hope.
Well, that's in the oven and cooled down, and it's looking quite the business. So now we're just going to put it onto the sieve and sieve it down into the 2 different grades. So now we get these nice bigger ones we can use at the bottom, and the finer ones that would be trickling down that embankment. As always, as I've talked about before, these DCC concepts, the packaging, very, very handy stuff, and that's exactly what we're going to use here. And in the interest of good diplomacy, sieves like this can be picked up for just $1 or $2 at your local cheap shop. So to cement marital relations, get your own sieve. So there you go. There are our larger stones, and here are the finer ones. And I think it's just the variation in the color and the texture, which is probably what's really going to help us. Of course, by the time we put our dirt across it and brush it in between, that's what's going to act as our segue between the materials.
So as we pop in our feeder wires for the electrical, a format you're all familiar with, I just literally put brown paint onto the foam board and then dust it with a bit of dirt from the garden that we've sifted down here. And we're doing it immediately as quick as we can, using the paint as a glue. But rest assured, we are going to come back along and repeat the process. We also just spray on just a little bit of basic flocking at the moment. We really don't need this, but this just fills in nicely. And now we're going to tape off where the actual building is, and we're going to experiment with a whole different approach to what I had in my idea regarding a slab around it.
That bit may not have seemed all that necessary, but it's worth just making sure we've got a nice clean area for the building to sit in and a little concrete lip that's going to live around the scene. Generally, I build it up and join everything up as once, but I want the building to still easily remove out if we need to maintain or access the cables. So this is basically the extra step we're doing.
Also, before we lay down our AK interactive concrete, I like to just make a few markings with the pin now and then just scribe a few expansion joints into the concrete.
And this step here with the pins clearly is so we know where we're going to score it. Generally, once we've done it and come in with the blade will fall into position and refine this groove again. But just in case, as I've discovered, and mostly with the balsa wood, that's not always the case. We should be okay with foam though. AK Terrain's concrete is what we're going to use for this. And you can see I've been reasonably heavy with my usage of this, but it is good stuff. And it goes a long way if you just water it down slightly, just like you would with concreting to get a nice finish on it.
So we just have our AK interactive concrete. I dip my craft spatula into a little bit of water and just gently spread it around like the real thing.
A couple of things. Don't worry too much if a bit goes over the side. That's how real concrete goes, and you can easily blend that in. That's going to work in your favor. Generally, I'd like to go in on the edges, but I got something else planned, so don't worry about that. And it's a never-ending battle trying to get that smoothed finish exactly the way you want it. But don't worry too much, because once it dries, you can sand it back and get it nice and level. The whole idea is you've got a reasonably smooth layer, and this is pretty much the format we're going to take. You don't have to pull the tape up now. I'm going to.
And carefully we'll now remove the tape while it is still wet. Remember, try and pull it in a direction that's away from the edge that you want.
Oh, you know what's going to happen there, didn't you? Just looking for excess moisture, that's all we're doing at the moment. And we just leave this one to dry now, overnight.
So just gently finding our expansion joints, and you'll notice I flip the blade around and use the back. I'm also going to come in with just a steel ruler and just gently open them up slightly where we can. We're just going to cut in a few cracks, maybe a little pothole here and there. And of course we just take a stiff bristled brush to sort of open and clean it up a bit. Of course it's then just a matter of taking a black paint or olive drab or just something dark that really gives the definition, and I know I love to use that word, do these expansion joints. It all starts to bring the scene together bit for bit. It might all look a little wrong for the minute, but as soon as we come in with a little bit of our white grout that we'll decant on now, and then just brush into place, I'm using a Davco Corn Silk colour, just a slightly off-white. I think this really does just help a lot. And then what we're going to do is just take a few of our pastels, just using a little bit of a red, a little bit of a yellow, and a little bit of a black and a brown, and just dust them in. We can come back and fine tune this later, but it's just to give a bit of base color down at the moment. And as you can see, we're doing it to the other section. This is the back bit. The other bit will be sort of semi-entering a car park. And of course, the magic ingredient I do love has to be this olive drab that I just go around with on the brush and just put into places. It'll quickly use the capillary action of your media to just gently blend into areas that you need it to be. And of course, just a little bit of weathering powder here and there. That olive drab is truly realistic in the sense that just I have concrete slabs around the house and places where, particularly on the southern side, you'll just see it starting to form up there a little bit. I always think it's a wonderful thing. But let's get back to it now. And of course, as mentioned, we're going to dump our glue on and keep layering up our dirt over it. And we're breaking it up into a couple of different pieces. That dirt makes one heck of a mess, so let's get it all cleaned up. Well, that's great. I forgot to hit record. Basically, keeping it for all these flat edges up, and it's just straight with it. The quick PVA glue. It's not diluted or anything. We've gone straight down. We're just taking a little bit of grey and that sort of sandstone talus, a little bit of buff, and just a handful of some yellower type buff to a quick mix, and we're going to drop it in just to give it some definition. It doesn't really matter. It's just for texture, because we're going to come in with the weathering powder when we join that scene up, because there's still going to be dirt that will link it up, which you'll see in the next bit as we move it onto the section. Quick test that our train actually passes without bumping and everything, and it looks good. Now, what is this we're up to over here? I thought maybe we could come up with a bit of a stormwater coming down the embankment. Ta-da! Joseph, come on down. It's time to play Guess What That Squiggle Is. I profess I'm not much of the artistic type, especially on a phone with just my finger, but see if you can pick up a few of these beauties. So first of all, to those of you that don't know what a squiggle is, I was introduced to a squiggle, or a doodle as some of you well may know it, is basically a simple, small drawing that you might doodle when distracted doing something else. But being in Australia, of course, the person who taught me how to draw was the one and only Mr Squiggle, a popular TV show that was on, and unfortunately the creator of Mr Squiggle has passed away. However, it was a tremendous show full of wonderful knock-knock jokes from Gus the Snail, lovely riddles from Bill the Steam Shovel, and some wonderful squiggles, which was basically some kids would just make a few little squiggles on a piece of paper. It was presented to Mr Squiggle, who would draw a picture, mostly upside down.
But I've changed my mind.
Well, I like his grin.
Cranky old Blackboard would say, "Hurry up."
You see this one?
Hurry up.
All right, Blackboard. It's not long to go.
That was Blackboard.
Yes, look at this one from Angelo Walter
I'll
of
close my
Warrnambool in
eyes.
Victoria.
I can't possibly look.
I can't look either. What are we going to do?
Well, I guess I have to do the squiggle.
All right.
The board would be spun around to reveal a picture. It was really fantastic, and like most of my friends, we watched this show upside down on our heads so we could find out what it was quicker. Well, of course, I do have a Mr Squiggle in my daughter's room. I even have this wonderful t-shirt here my wife made me. Needless to say, what we're going to do, it's a simple thing. I'm going to present an image to you, and you're going to tell me what it must be. Let's start off with a nice simple one here. I'll step you through it. What can this possibly be? I think it's a no-brainer. It's a strawberry. When this first came out on the Apple iPhone, this touch ability to draw pictures on your phone, while it is a great idea, there were no advanced editing things. You couldn't go back. You needed to get this all done in one hit. And as soon as you've let go of the screen, you've got about 3 seconds before everything just disappears. Hence why some quick screen grabs. But I think you've got to be quick. You can't be longer than about 20 seconds to draw the picture. So here's what 20 seconds can achieve. Let's see if you can get the next ones. I know, it's an ice cream. Some cherries. You are doing well. An eggplant or aubergine, depending on what side of the planet you're on. A cheeseburger. Yes, indeed. Happy birthday. It looks like a cupcake to me. And here's the conundrum for the day. Most people in Australia should be able to crack the code on this one. If not, see if you can figure out what this is. That's right. It's the Australian snack food iconic one that is the burgering. And that shade of orange is exactly how they do look. Thanks for playing, and you'll be taking home some wonderful prizes. Let's get back to our stormwater drain pipe. What an inspirational distraction. And here we are taking a bit of evergreen styrene and just adding what would basically be a PVC downpipe for stormwater heading somewhere down there. Now we're going to come in and start layering this up with our crushed leaves. And I think that's a fantastic appearance we're starting to build up here. Not quite done yet. Let's pay attention. These are the sort of trees I was chasing, and we'll even come in as I pull over past some on the way to another job. And let's have a look what we can create with creating the bottom of these trees. And that will wrap up part one. We'll stop it with our trees arriving now.
Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. It seemed like a pretty magnificent place to stop. Woodland Scenics box, plonks down, full of trees. Not the ones I was specifically hoping. We'll cover that later on. In the meantime, though, that's going to do it. And I certainly look forward to seeing you in the next one. Please do stay safe when we continue our journey of putting in a bowling alley on Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thanks so much. See you next time. Stay safe. Toodles!